Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I'm Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No
Oh,
Darkness But
darkness,
Ours.
but ours. And tonight, in fact, we are going to a very dark place. In fact, we'll open a little quotation here from John Connolly's The Killing Kind, which absolutely sums up, I think, where we're at. This is a honeycomb world. It hides a hollow heart. The truth of nature, wrote the philosopher Democritus, lies in deep mines and caves. The stability of what is seen and felt beneath our feet is an illusion, but this life is not as it seems. Below the surface there are cracks and fissures and pockets of stale, trapped air, stalagmites and helictites, and unmapped dark rivers that flow ever downward. It is a place of caverns and stone waterfalls, a labyrinth of crystal tumors and frozen columns, where history becomes future, then becomes now. For in total blackness, time has no meaning. This is a honeycomb world. You must be careful where you step, and you must be ready for what you might find.
Yes.
Yeah,
And so what we're talking about is underground horror,
yeah,
what some people might call chthonic horror.
yeah.
And one thing that my husband pointed out to me before I finished writing down a bunch of things was that the actual definition of cave is a a hole in the earth large enough for a person to enter. So to some
Yes,
degree, it when we say the pleasure of a hole is that you can crawl into it, we're referencing essentially the fact that all caves are like the mouth of the grave, and they're also kind of like the vagina, the
yeah,
Earth's vagina. And there's this kind of sense that when like something very, very archetypical and very, very old in us that
yes.
drives us to want to go inside a cave. And why? Why does that make sense? I don't know. We want to go as far away as we can from natural light and then end up in a place where if you turn off your headlamp, there's nothing. It's like going to outer space, except you're going to inner space.
I mean, as Haley Piper said when we interviewed her, especially if you're, we think if you think if when you think of society or civilization as a a shining beacon of light or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that light can be pretty cruel if you're somebody who doesn't quite fit the
Yes.
norm. And the darkness can be a place of safety and of healing. And I mean, it's one thing that I mean, there's lots and lots of different layers and levels to the whole motif. But I mean, one of the things surely about it is it's a place it's a place of retreat. It can be a place of retreat and it can be a
Yeah.
place of sanctuary, but a sanctuary that comes at a price and changes. One story that springs to mind is Robert E. Howard's Worms of the Earth,
Mm.
which, like Macken's The Novel of the Black Seal, has this idea that the sort of the legends of the fairy or of the elves, goblins, trolls, whatever, these are all rooted in some older, people, perhaps pre-human or perhaps an earlier form of human, who who retreated, who found a place to hide away from us, who in the phrase they used in Howard's story, who have drawn apart, and
Yes.
as a result they have become something less than or other than human.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of in the
And I mean, the two things that always come to my mind when I think about underground horror are, of course, Neil Marshall's brilliant
the
The
descent.
Descent.
Yes.
But when I first went to see The Descent, in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, is this based on Jeff Long's novel, The Descent?
Oh yes, yes. You mentioned
It's totally not. Totally not. The only, the only thing they have in common is that, yes, these caves, this system of caverns, this system of tunnels, this abyss that the main characters enter into in both cases is inhabited already by people who have adapted to that world,
Yeah.
people who are, eyeless and odd and feral. And in Jeff Long's case, there is a real sense that, and we'll get into this in a second, that these people who he calls the Hadals, because of Hades, I guess, Homo Hadalis.
I like that.
Yeah, that these people are what sparked the idea that under the earth is hell. That under the earth is a system of caves that if you go down far enough, you find people who just want to take you apart. And for no hugely interesting reason other than they can. But also, the further you get into exploring that world with Long, and this is like it's a big novel. It's large. There is this real sense that the Hadals break people down to make them something else. And there are, in fact, people who have chosen to join the Hadals and who are surface humans who have become Hadals. And, this system of what we would definitely call torture, and deconstruction, bodily deconstruction. Not just bodily deconstruction, but also the Hadals appear to be somewhat telepathic. Okay. So mental deconstruction as well, is to adapt you to a different world. Yeah.
That theme of adaptation, but it's a kind of an adaptation at the end of which, can you even still be called a human being?
Yes, exactly.
There's a Junji Ito comic. There's like where there are like these weirdly distorted human shapes, holes in a wall, and then
the enigma of Amigara Fault.
That's right. Yes, and at the other end there's like, oh, there's a hole. It's shaped exactly like me, and the person just fits into it. And of course, by the time they come out,
this is my hole. It was made for me. And again, that absolute draw, of, well, if it's shaped for me, I have to go into it.
And it's another chthonic one actually. There's a place in. Have you ever heard of a place called Hrad Huska or Castle Huska?
Yes.
Yeah. And supposedly it was built over a pit that led down, and things came out of it and attacked people.
Yes.
And allegedly it's constructed with the battlements facing inwards, because it's not built to keep someone out. It's built to keep something in. And I do wonder if this is maybe if F. Paul Wilson ever heard about this, and if this is like a partial inspiration.
I wonder if he did. It's also a big influence on one of my favorite big dumb films, The Cave.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, and so it begins with these people discovering this lid over a hole, and it has on the lid and around the lid, it has very obvious warnings, and essentially it's like, here's a bas relief of Templars going down into the hole and fighting with flying demon kind of things. And it's like, don't go down there. That's not a good idea. Don't do that. It's really not. Yeah. And, however, immediately the guys who are looking at it decide, oh, what the fuck, blow up the, blow the lid off, literally, and descend.
We've always wanted to win a Darwin Award.
Yeah, exactly. Let's descend into the depths. I'm sure we might be able to find, I don't know, minerals, jewels, something like that.
Or we just want to find out what the hell's down there because we're
Yes,
nosy.
exactly. And so, and then we go to, and inevitably, of course, then people have to come and try to rescue them, and it's a whole team of cave divers, um, and rescue experts, and long story short, they discover that if you go down there, you might get something which will adapt you to the cave.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's it's like I said, it's big dumb fun. It's Lena Headey's in it, which is always nice.
Always good.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I'm sorry. Just to flip back a moment, what it is absolutely built around is the idea that under the earth is the realm of the dead. Under the earth are people who don't like you. Under the earth is hell. And there is this real feeling in most pagan systems. Under the earth is hell. This is the Devil's Atlas by Edward Brooke Hitching, which is an explorer's guide to heavens, hells, and afterworlds.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so many cultures, almost every culture has a myth of the catabasis, of somebody descending into that place, the Orpheus myth or whatever, always for some good reason. But it kind of goes to, something that we talk about a lot here, which is the thing of crossing a boundary, of people stepping over the threshold into some place where they really shouldn't be. I did the descent. That is true on a literal physical level. It's made pretty clear this is not a place where people really are supposed to be. That's why it fucks your head up. That's why you hallucinate, you get disoriented. There are all sorts of psychological impacts to being deep
underground. Because you lose your sense of what's up and what's down. All the things that you're used to navigating by above the surface are no longer there anymore.
Exactly.
You go down far enough and you encounter fluctuations of the magnetic field, and it's all sorts of stuff. You go down far enough and everything turns to lava. Rock literally loses its shape, and you become consumed by the heat coming out from the inside of the earth. And what does that sound like? That sounds like hell.
Hell, yeah, exactly. There's all that stuff, and yet at the same time, there's the draw to these places, as sometimes partly as a kind of refuge, but also there is that curiosity. That, again, something that so much of horror is about. It's about those impulses in us, which may not be socially responsible, socially acceptable. It may not even be conducive to our own personal survival, but even so, remain, very, very powerful drivers within us. That
I think there is this real feeling that, and you certainly see this in the construction of some Neolithic, Mesolithic, prehistoric sites, fugus, chamber tombs. There is this real feeling. And also the mystery religions. There is this real feeling that you go down and you move through, and when you come up again, you will be different.
Yeah,
it is a ritual thing. It's like a dare. With the help of the gods, you will pitch yourself against this place that is antithetical to human life. And with the help of the gods, you will either emerge again, reborn, having had your numinous experience, or you will not emerge again.
There's a kind of, and there's a kind of, I'm sure Freud would have a field day with this imagery as well. That kind of descending into the id, into all your kind of unacknowledged and perhaps unacknowledgeable desires of you, but emerging from that with a fuller knowledge of recognition of who you are and all the dark shit that goes on under the surface, down in the depths.
Yes, down in the sediment. One of the most fascinating discoveries archaeologically of the last little while, and I think this was like 5 years ago. They discovered a system of caves in Central America, where that they believe provided the blueprint for the idea of Xibalba, the Mayan
hell.
the Mayan underworld. And again, it's like, yes, it's the land of the dead. Yes, it's hell. There's a bunch of awful stuff down there, and yet everything also grows up from there. And Xibalba is kind of interesting because it's not only under the ground, but it's also under the water.
Okay.
And there's a myth about the hero twins going down to where one death and two death sit in judgment, and basically challenging the Lords of Death to a ball court mash down. And one of the there was a type of a game played with balls that sort of worked as a sacrificial counting in thing. So
just when you say it's a game played with balls and sacrificial, you're not. Are we talking like ritual castration kind of thing?
No. like actual balls. Actual balls. Probably made of
with this stuff.
They were probably made of rubber, actually, because they could refine stuff from rubber plant. Anyway, so groups of Mayan youth would play against each other, and whoever won would get sacrificed.
Doesn't really sound like a great incentive to win, does it?
But then again, the Mexica also felt that it was a really great, wonderful thing to be. That's why they had the wars of the flowers. If they couldn't find people to war against, so that they could take prisoners who would then be sacrificed, they would war against themselves.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Is it like the sort of the green and purple Drazi thing in Babylon 5? Sort of like, okay, you take if you pull this color out, you're on that side. If you pull that color out on the other, and then you just fight until.
Yeah, basically, and whoever wins gets sacrificed, and it's like, yay, because blood powers the world engine. Anyway,
you
gotta do it, man. It's like, if you don't feed the world engine blood, then it stops, and nobody wants that. Anyway, so the hero twins go down into the court of death, the sunken ball court, and challenge the Lords of Death to a ball game, and and they lose, and their heads are cut off and stuck on a calabash tree. And then the beautiful daughter of the Lord of Death, one of the Lords of Death, comes and is harvesting calabashes from the tree, and the skulls talk to her, and one of them spits into her mouth as she kisses it, as I recall. And then his seed goes down inside of her, and she becomes pregnant, and she gives birth to him again. At which point he's able to collect bones from, he has, that's his victory. So he's able to collect bones from the world of the dead and bring them up to the surface, and then make new human beings.
Whoa.
So death can be overborne.
Wow. Yeah.
Anyway, so they found this system of caves, some of which are flooded, that go down very far, and then they come back up. And as far as they can tell, this is probably the model for Xibalba, for the idea of Xibalba. And it's entirely possible that there was a ritual in which priests would lead people down through Xibalba, maybe perhaps performing rituals, sacrifices, who knows, at various steps throughout the throughout the journey, and then lead them back up.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this Orphic journey, the idea of like, I go down into the land of the dead to try and get somebody back. I go down into the land of the dead to treat with the lords of death, with the lady of death. Did you know that Persephone predates Hades in some structures? Yeah. The system where, and you find this in a lot of pagan religions. It's sort of like an overlay of male gods on top of a much older female god.
Yeah.
So the like the old sow who births her pharaoh, who eats her pharaoh, who gives birth to the world and then eats it again. The earth and the under earth are usually female, and death is about the under earth. Death is about
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, another thing about the sort of the underground, it goes back to that a place like the Castle Husker and public. It's a place. It's not just a place into which you go and things happen. It's also a place from which chaos can erupt.
That's right. Chaos erupts from the whole.
Even on a very secular level. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons, for example, why James Herbert in his heyday managed to write some wrote horror novels that really hit the nerve of people. And I mean, The Rats, out of all those kind of 70s creature feature type things, is the one that I think was often imitated but never duplicated, because there is a phobia of rats for a lot of things, but also they're coming out from the sewers, they're coming out from the underground tunnels there. And in the third novel, Domain, which is the one that absolutely fucking terrified me because it's set in the aftermath of a nuclear attack, which is a whole nightmare in itself.
God,
but
yes.
The great bulk of that story happens underground.
Yeah.
The people who survived the initial attack are lucky enough to find an underground government bunker. Now they do venture out through the tunnels and back to the surface to see what's left of London, which isn't a pretty sight.
No.
Obviously, they get back down there only to find the rats kind of end up breaking into the tunnel, into the bunker, and they get driven out back to the surface, and then they're trying to find the big government command bunker, in the middle of London, only to find, of course, that the rats have swarmed in there and killed. I mean, of course, the killer rats are almost like the light relief in the aftermath of the kind of the nuclear holocaust. But and it's very much, the horror is very much secular. The rats are monstrous, but they're not supernatural in origin. They're a mutation created by atomic testing, and it kind of, the wheel has come full circle now. So all the horror in it is secular. It's one way or another. It's very largely man-made.
Yeah.
Even the rats are the result of us monkeying around with shit. But again, it's this pattern of it's underground, and that is their domain. It's
an interesting thing when you think about it, because on some level we understand that there's infrastructure underneath everything,
Yes.
And a lot of that infrastructure is man-made if you live in a city, and yet you are not really aware of what's going on inside your walls. You are not really aware of what you will find if you take everything down to the studs. You are not really aware of, what's underneath your feet, because there's a lot of stuff that could be lost. there's a lot of stuff that, could be forgotten, and, which brings us back to the honeycomb world.
And you can hear the second part of our discussion of underground horror at the same time next week. No Darkness But Ours is made possible through generous donations from horror enthusiasts just like you. If you'd like to support us, you can sign up to our Patreon and get access to exclusive content, or you can make a one-off donation via Ko-Fi. Links in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know in the comments, share and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Let us know as well if there's anything you'd really like to hear us talking about in the future, and we'll be back with more at the same time next week.
As ever, I have been Simon Bestwick.
And I remain Gemma Files, and this remains No Darkness But Ours.